Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm here in London. My name is Enzi Sewa, and it's around, let me see, just gone 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. But my guest today is Stuart Perrin, and he's in Connecticut, and he's just had about 12, 14 hours of snow. I like to say that because London is cold, but it's not that cold. Mind you, I've just finished doing another podcast from somebody in Sweden, and it's probably -12 there. It's freezing. So London's not doing too bad. But the north of England, we got snow. So without much ado, Stuart, who's in Connecticut, is going to tell us his journey. And he's recently written a book on meditation, but he's going to tell us his journey, how he started, what happened in the past that led him to the spiritual path he came on and led him to what he's doing today. So without much ado, Stuart in cold Connecticut, hello.
Thank you for having me here. It just comes from my heart to talk about all of this. It's just a very important subject. You know, I don't know, look, when I was 16 years old, I went through a very traumatic experience, but it's experience that completely transformed my life. I was with my mother and sister. We were on vacation in Florida, actually, and we got a phone call that my father was very sick. He's in the hospital. We have to come back to New York. So we flew back to New York. Went to the hospital. My father was lying in bed with about 106-degree fever. He was shaking, and he didn't recognize my mother, my sister, or myself. And I mean, that in itself was traumatic. And this went on for about a week, maybe even a little more than a week. And one day I walked into his hospital room. He was lying in bed, Sensi, in a total state of serenity. I looked into his eyes, I could see 1,000 miles. The room was full of light and energy. But I had never experienced anything like it before. I never saw my father with that kind of serenity. And I sat down, I took his hand and I said, "Do you know me, who I am?" And he shook his head, yes. Anyway, at one point I got up, I left his room, and I bumped into his nurse. And this woman, what she told me changed my life. She said to me, in her experience, and she worked in a ward where people were dying all the time, oncology ward, cancer, and all kinds of problems like that. And she said, to her experience, just before people die, they go into a state of total serenity. It's like they have surrendered all the conflict of life, and they're ready to leave, and there's peace. You can look into their eyes, you can see forever. I mean, there's just this deep sense of peace about them. And I thought, why did my father have to wait 49 years to experience this, literally 2 hours before he died? And it completely changed my life. And I knew how insecure I was as a young man, how, I very, very introverted person. I had a lot of fear in me. And I knew, Stuart, you're not going to be able to change this yourself. You have to find someone who can teach you how to get over yourself. And it began a voyage. I mean, I was a pretty good basketball player when I was younger, and I was thinking maybe a scholarship, go to college, become a doctor, a lawyer, something of that nature. And my whole life changed. I started reading things about Buddhism and Hinduism and mystical books and even mystical Christianity and Judaism. I got deeply involved in trying to find an answer to what I experienced in my father's hospital room. I went traveling all around the world, half around the world, always on my way to India, because I thought I would find some Swami there or teacher there that would help me. And after 9 years of probably the most difficult and intense period of my life, I mean, I really went through kind of minor league hell in those 9 years, looking for somebody who could help me. And I found him in my hometown, which is kind of, the absurdity of life. And I found him in a place that I had walked past at least 500 times when I was younger. And what happened was I was living in Paris. I was completely broke. And I got in touch with a friend of mine in New York. And I asked him if he could, send me a plane ticket to get back to America. I need to get back. I need to get a job and start working and taking care of myself. And he sent me a ticket. I picked it up at the American Express in Paris and flew back to New York. I was living on the floor of this friend of mine's apartment. I mean, I had no money. I was broke. And he said to me one evening, he said, "Stuart, let's go out and get some dinner." I said, "Okay, sounds great." There was a restaurant in the village, Greenwich Village, that we liked. So we're walking on 7th Avenue South, and we come to this Oriental antique shop, a shop that I had walked past at least 500 times and never went in. And we're looking in the window, and this friend of mine says, "Stuart, you love this stuff." And I did. I love Asian art. I love Buddhist and Hindu art. And I was always deeply attracted to it as a young man. I'm still deeply. In fact, I was in a business for 30 years, buying and selling Buddhist and Hindu art in New York. I had galleries in New York. And I said to him, "Charlie, I'm broke. What am I going to do in there?" He said, "This stuff is like museum quality. It's very expensive." He said to me something it doesn't cost to look. So we went in the shop. Standing at the center of the shop was a man who radiated the same power, the same serenity, energy I experienced in my father's hospital room. I took one look at him and I was attracted to him like a magnet. And he began to show me pictures of himself studying in India with a Swami, a guru, and told me about the meditation that he taught, and said to me, "If you want to study with me, come back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the evening." So as I was walking out of his gallery, I looked back and there was that same light I saw in my father's hospital, the same power, the same serenity. I couldn't believe my eye. It was extraordinary. And I said to Charlie, I said, "I got to go back and meet this guy. I don't know what happened in there, but something really important happened in my life." We went out, we had dinner, we went back to his apartment. He was living in a tenement area of Chelsea when Chelsea was a slum in Manhattan. Bathtubs in the kitchen, toilets in the hall, $45 a month rents, apartments that in the 1960s, when you were a young man, a young woman, you wanted to get out of your parents' house, you went and lived in. They were cheap and affordable, and you went and lived in these places. At any rate, we're walking up the stairs. We meet a guy named Ed Borden in the hallway. And Ed says to us, "Why don't you come into my apartment to have some tea?" We said, "Oh, great, Ed, love it." So we went into his apartment. This guy, Zenzi, probably had a $500,000 Oriental art collection in his apartment.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding you, in this tenement area. It was unbelievable. And I looked at him, I looked around, I said, "Where did you get this stuff?" He said, "There's a guy in Greenwich Village named Rudy." Rudy was the person I met an hour before.
Yes.
Yeah. And I said to myself, "Stuart, the gods are talking to you. Once in your life, listen." The next day I went down to meet him at 5 o'clock in the evening, and he showed me a meditation exercise, which honestly was exactly what I was looking for. A way to build my chakra system, my inner life, that was strong enough to gain a permanent connection with higher energy in the universe. It was extraordinary where the foundation was inside myself, how to get the heart chakra to open, how to get my mind, which used to drive me crazy, quiet, how to get sexual energy, which used to drive me crazy, quiet, how to open the heart, how to build foundation inside myself so that I can have a permanent connection with spirit, God, higher energy, whatever you want to call it. The meditation he taught me was non-denominational. It didn't matter if you were Christian, Jewish, you were Hindu, Buddhist, all it mattered is, did you want to be a happy human being? Did you want to learn to open your heart and live with joy and love and live your life? But in order to learn this, there was a covenant. You had to do the work on yourself. It didn't just happen. You had to work profoundly and deeply on yourself. Anyway, I started studying with this man, and it was unbelievable how my life got transformed. About a year into it, I asked him, I said, Rudy, what happened the day I met you? And he said to me, this is something that almost brings chills through me. He said, Stuart, I saw you looking in the window of my shop. I was looking at my son lost in the universe. I just pulled you right in the door. And what he taught me was miraculous because, look, I was born in the slums of the Bronx. I was born in the tenement areas of the Bronx, the Southeast Bronx. And, I wasn't ready to go live in a monastery. I wasn't ready to go live in an ashram. Understand? I wasn't ready to do any of that. I mean, how can I transform life itself into a temple? How can I make the things that exist in my life into something sacred? And I began to realize the only way that can happen is you have to transform yourself. And I realized a very important fact, Zenzi. The only person I was up against was me.
That's right.
And I had to learn how to master the chaos inside myself. I had to stop being so opinionated. I had to stop knowing exactly what was right for everybody else. I had to begin to listen to life. I had to be able to understand that when people came into my life, there was something I did to attract them, and they came into my life to show me things that I had to change inside myself. And instead of being angry at them, and what do you got to change to it? What do you have to fix in yourself so you can? And I began to realize that life itself was sacred. It was endlessly my teacher. All I needed to do was build a system inside that was strong enough to be able to embrace the most extraordinary guru there is on the planet Earth, and that's life itself.
Yeah.
And my teacher told me this, after about 4 years of studying with him, he made me a teacher of this meditation. And he asked me he had a group of people in Texas that wanted to start a center there and to do the meditation that he taught. And he asked me to go there. And just before I left, as I was going out the door, he said to me, Stuart, if anybody ever asks you who the guru is, just tell them the guru is life. And I began to realize it took me 10 years, maybe more, to learn what he meant by that, of working on myself and throwing myself into life and letting life be this amazing teacher. So, this is basically how it all happened. I mean, I recognized at an early age, hey, you're crazy, Stuart. Just a neurotic young man. I had a lot of creativity and a lot of talent, and I was writing, poetry and this and that. But I said, you are incapable of living with yourself. You got to find somebody who can teach you how to master all this craziness. And when my teacher trained me to take the focal point of my attention and bring it to the chakra below the navel, where the real power is in a human being, third chakra, when he trained me how to open the heart and how to use the mind and my breath and my need to have a spiritual life and the will to do it, to build a system inside that was capable of truly connecting with a higher force in the universe. It totally transformed my life. It totally transformed, and it gave me a kind of inner peace that I experienced in my father's hospital room 2 hours before he died. To live with it. It shouldn't be, rest in peace. Everybody says RIP. It should be LIP, live in peace. And if you live in peace, you're going to be able to rest in peace. You know?
It's true. So right. We wait till we're transcending to rest in peace, and we live in chaos.
We live in hell. And but we need to learn to live in peace. So it
Yes.
should be LIP, live in peace. And if you
Yeah.
learn how to do this, you will rest. If not, you're going to have to come back here and try it again. You know,
Yeah.
there's this thing called reincarnation. And if you haven't lived in peace, you got to come back here until you learn how to do it.
And it's true when you say we live in hell, because when you look at what's going on around us today, we're the microcosm, that's the macrocosm. So it's like, what are we doing? It's just a reflection of the chaos within inside us that we can't control and we need to control. And once we do that, and it has the ripple effect, we will have the peace that we need within the whole world, because we're all connected.
That's right.
We're all connected. You can't be truly happy when everything around you is chaos. Although we say yes, you can cut it off and be there, but it's not the ideal thing.
You can't cut it off. You never. It's always going to be crazy. There's 8 billion people that all have to learn how to LIP.
Live in peace.
Get strong enough inside where it no longer interferes with that sense of quiet, that love inside, the compassion you have for people, instead of being upset by what they do, and recognizing that they are there to teach you how to change yourself. You just have to know how to do it. That's why one needs.
You know something, you just said something very significant. Have the compassion to see what somebody else is doing, but have the compassion not to react in a negative way, but there's something they're doing is a reflection of something within you, because you're creating that. So what is it that you need to change to stop that person from reacting in that way towards you?
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you what happened to me when I was younger. I was never really terribly interested in getting rich, making money. I wanted to write books. I wanted to be an artist, you know. And but I used to work in restaurants in order to support myself. And I would wait tables. Sometimes I would tend bar, you know, things like that. And there was a bartender in this restaurant I was working with. I couldn't go up and say, "Give me a martini," without getting into a fight with this guy. It was extraordinary. I mean, the chemistries were so at odds of each other. So one day I'm standing at the bar and he's talking about meeting his girlfriend that night for a midnight breakfast, that they were going to celebrate some occasion, you know, their relationship together. And I just stopped. I said, "Oh my God, there is somebody in the world who loves this guy." I said, "Stuart, what is wrong with you? Why can't you see something that you like about him?" Somebody loves him. They're having a midnight. They sleep with him. They're around him all the time. They live together. I said, "Why can't you find something?" You know, I said, "Stuart, it's not him. It's you." And I had to go deep enough inside myself to find something that I really, and this guy taught me something really important about me. I had to change. And it was extraordinary how from that moment, he and I had kind of a friendship.
Yeah.
We never fought again. And it was me that had to change. I had to stop judging him, stop criticizing, find something of God inside this guy, you know, and it was amazing how it changed. And I think that is part of the kind of work that we need, instead of judging everybody and being opinionated, and worst of all, instead of being right all the time. You know, we have to look at it like, what is it teaching us about us? What do we have to change?
And you know, that's about everything as we walk this life. After growing up and then becoming an adult and then taking control of our own actions, everything is there not to work against us, but really to work in our favor if we can understand and look at it in the way we're meant to look at it, so that we can be the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And it is about changing, and it is about letting go, and letting go of those things that do not uplift us to be the person that we're really meant to be. Because as you say, Stuart, we're meant to live in peace, and we have everything within us to live that life. But it's like I don't realize it, and we're warring and doing the opposite, and we need to channel.
We're born with everything.
Yes.
Listen, we are born with all the tools we need to change ourselves.
Yes.
The tools are the mind. Now, instead of using the mind as this intense thinking instrument that drives us crazy and creates enormous amounts of pressure inside us,
frozen.
We have to learn to use the mind as pure energy that can open the very core of our being, the foundation, the chakra below the place where all great singers sing from, all great dancers dance from, all great athletes who are in that zone. They're not in their heads. They are somehow centered in that chakra, that energy center right below the navel, where the power is. The place the Chinese call the Tatian, the Japanese call the Hara, and where there's grounding, there's balance, and the mind, when it's used and focused there as energy, not as a thinking instrument, but as pure energy, it becomes like a surgical instrument that opens the very core of our being. The next, instrument we have is breath.
Yes.
Try not to breathe for 5 minutes.
I'm dead.
Die. But breath is life. Every time we inhale, we take in all of life. Every time we exhale, we let go of a part of ourselves. I always, there's a Hindu mantra called So Hum. And it's when you inhale, you say to yourself, so. When you exhale, you say, hum. You do this quietly, silently in yourself. And if you're listening to your breathing, it becomes so hum. So hum translated into English means I am, is that. So we are using life to build the chakra system inside. And we are exhaling and using breath and to surrender all of the things that are keeping us from being happy people. But one has to learn how to master the mind and master the breath. Then they have to learn to use their will, because there are going to be 1,000 roadblocks to doing this inside a human being. There are blockages, there are tensions, there are endless problems. The will enables us to get past those problems. And the most important thing of all, Zenzi, is the need to connect with a higher energy in the universe. If a person doesn't have that need, they can breathe, it'll never work. Something has to be hungry inside to connect with a higher force. And then we have all the tools to do it. Then we have to learn how to do it. It's like an artist. You understand? They have the paintbrush, the paint, but they got to learn how to do it. So they go to masters, and great masters will teach them how to become artists. They have to develop the craft.
Yes. They have to develop the craft in order, because we are co-creators of our own life.
That's right. And meditation is not a religion. It's not a cult. It's nothing. It's a craft. And we have all the tools. We have to learn to master the craft. And there's a great, expression: when a student is ready,
the master will appear.
Will be there. And when I was ready, I walked past that store 500 times. That day I was in a state, Stuart, I was ready. I walked in the door, and he saw me and pulled me in the door. I was ready to hear what he had to say. And that is really the key to it. somewhere we have to find that need inside ourselves. My teacher, Rudy, used to tell me the world is just spiritually malnourished.
Yes.
They're spiritual, but they don't know how. People don't know how to fix themselves inside, how to use what they're born with to fix them. They have to learn how to do it.
Because we've become disconnected from our source. And because we've become disconnected from the source, we've forgotten what to do and how to, and you're right, how to do it. So we're living a completely different life that is actually alien to us and is detrimental to our well-being. And now we're living in a time when we're getting all this knowledge to wake up, to reconnect to that source energy again, so that we can be the beings that we're meant to be and live the life we're meant to live.
The time we live in, okay. I used to travel all over the world teaching what I do. I used to be in Europe all the time, in South America, in Mexico. Oh, I had students all over the place. And when COVID hit, I couldn't travel anymore. It was very dangerous, to travel the way I was traveling. So somebody said to me, why don't you use Zoom to teach? So I said, what the hell is Zoom? I had no idea what it was. I said, what is Zoom? And he said, he showed me what Zoom. So I started contacting my students living in Europe, living in South America, living all over the United States. Some of them at that time were even living in India, about these classes I was setting up on Zoom. And I said, I don't even know, how can you do this with a computer? How do you transmit Shakti energy through a computer? And I had a class. It was amazing how it worked. The power of the class just blew me away. The reaction of the people. I do this on Zoom 7 times a week. And I have students in Belgium, in Italy, in Germany, in the Middle East, in Brazil, in Mexico, and all over America. They come to these classes and people are benefiting. And I said, well, Stuart, you're living in the modern world. God created Zoom. God created Zoom. If you want to use it properly, this is a way of transmitting great teachings to people. So I started doing this, and it's been kind of amazing, Sensi, how this thing has worked with people. And now it's even growing, it's getting bigger.
And it is the age of technology where we don't have to now get on a plane and spend hours flying. We can connect. You can do your classes in 4 different places at the same time because they're all tuning in.
That's right.
As long as the time zone is correct and you coordinate the coordinate the timing. That's all you need.
I do 2 classes. One of them is at 7:30 in the evening, which was for people in the Western Hemisphere. The other one was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, where in England it would probably be 6 o'clock now in the evening. Yeah. And in Europe, on the continent, it would be 7 o'clock in the evening. In the Middle East, it's, I think, 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the evening. So I do 2 sets of classes to make it possible for people to come from all these different time zones. Yeah. And there's 7 of them a week that I do. And now I'm training my students. I have 2 students that are doing a class each on this Zoom, in order to get practice in teaching what I'm trying to train them in. So it's you just have to find, God gives you what works.
Yeah. And I have found that when you are meant to do something, when you're in search, and you say you're in search of that spiritual energy that you saw in your father's room, you wanted that so badly. And when you want that connection so badly with your creator, with that, and it's not just your higher self, it is with the creator who you're connected to, and who from that your higher self is connected to. When you want that connection so badly, the creator will find a way
it's like in the Bible, you suddenly have a wand and the Red Sea parts, and there's a pathway through all the madness. to get to the, the Holy Land, or the, whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
it just opens. But I'll tell you, there's another element to this, Senzi, and
Yes.
that is we all have karma. We all live in the world. We have to act and interact with life. And when I was younger, honestly, one of the greatest things I was literally afraid of and I had a lot of problems with was ever getting involved in the making of money in the business world. That type of life, that the greed, I mean, I used to know people, and it used to make me crazy. I wanted nothing to do with it when I was in my 20s. And when my teacher, Rudy, sent me to Texas, I wound up running a meditation center there, and there were like 20 people living in this house, and they had to eat. We had to eat. So, and one day he came down there and he said to me, I also want you to build meditation groups. And I did this. I started ashrams all over Texas for him. They were for him, they weren't for me.
Mhm.
I was teaching in prisons, I was teaching in hospitals, I was teaching in all kinds of places. I was working, plus running a business. I had a kind of a junky antique business at the time. And I would just to earn a living, to pay for my life. And I was working 18 hours a day, teaching 2 meditation classes as well. Rudy comes down and we're standing on the porch of my house. And he says to me, and this is a true story, Stuart, you're not working hard enough. So I started to laugh. I said, well, Rudy, what do you want me to do? And he just pointed his hand. He said, buy that building. Just quietly said this to me. The building was a strip mall, a shopping center that was right next to the house where I was living and running this meditation center. And I said to him, Rudy, I have $600 to my name. I said, how the hell am I going to? He said, anyone can do it with money. And I'll never forget him telling me that. And, a month later, I bought the building. And his teaching was, Stuart, you have to overcome your fear of living in the world. You have to overcome your fear of money. You have to overcome your fear of financial success. You can't hide behind the fact that you're a poet and a writer and now a meditation teacher. You have to learn to live in the world. And you have to transform the world that you live in into something sacred. And if you don't learn how to overcome that fear you have in yourself of being successful, you will never, ever truly have a spiritual life. You were born on the earth to learn to be a happy person and how to use anything that God gives you as a way of learning how to grow inside yourself. I'm telling you, it changed me. This whole fear of money went away. And I suddenly began to realize, Stuart, there's nothing to be afraid of. The fear is that you get trapped by it.
You're right.
It's not Rudy told me, he said, it's not to have, it's to have and to be free of everything. They are your test. Can you have all these things and live this wonderful, successful life and be free of it at the exact same time? It doesn't have you.
No.
And it was the beginnings of me learning how to support very big situations that required a lot of money and a great deal of financial pressure that I had, but how not to get sucked dry.
Yeah.
And all the greedy people I used to meet. And I learned something. When you make money, there's only one other, you got to make more money with people. And I said, no, I don't have to live that way. I have to make what I need to make my life nice and interesting and fun. And I don't have to make billions of dollars in order to get up the next day,
I like what you just said there, that you go to achieve what you need to live the quality of life you need. You don't need billions. And you're so right. I was watching, I don't know what it was. I was watching something the other day and I turned to my son. I spoke to my son and my mother. And I thought, I don't want billions. I want enough to have what I want in a comfortable way, in a nice spread, in a tropical place. I don't want a 20-bedroom house. Oh, no, I don't need that. But I want a nice spread and a car and everything in a tropical area. And that, I said, if millions came to me, that's all I want. Then I'll look at, well, I've got all this. What can I do now for somebody else? Or what can I do to help? I do not need billions. What am I going to do with it?
Well,
all those got it. That's what I'm not saying. I don't need it.
I can tell you a great story about this, okay? I used to, when I started out in business selling rusty wrenches and wagon wheels for $10, $20, wound up in a very expensive art business, and I was selling very important art pieces. Not impressionism and stuff like that, but in the field that I was in, expensive, high-level art. And I got this great statue. It was really an amazing statue. And I called up a client of mine. Guy was worth probably $15 billion. I mean, this is back, I haven't been in this business for 20 years, but this is back when I was doing that business. Mm-hmm. And he came with a number of people he came with. I had a loft there in Manhattan. And he came to my loft to see the statue. Came out of there was an elevator that went right onto the loft. Came right out of the elevator, bitching and complaining about everything in life. There was nothing right about his life.
Oh, Lord.
And I looked at him and I said, Stuart, this is the Buddha talking to you. I said, this is God talking to you, telling you how doesn't matter how much money you are, happiness is an inner state. So I looked at him and I said, what are you complaining about? You were born into this. And he was. He was the second generation. His family made all this money. And he said to me something I'll never forget. He said, you want it? You want it? And I looked at him and I said, well, first of all, you're not going to give it to me. And second of all, no, not if it's going to make me as miserable as you are. Okay? As happy as you are. And it's true.
And what did he say, Stuart? What was his reaction?
I've been in India a lot, and we meet very simple people, and they would come into my house and eat something, and their hearts were open, and there was so much love inside them, and caring and giving inside them. They had found the real treasure in life, and that real treasure is in the human heart. It's love. Yes. It's giving. It's compassion. It's sharing.
Stuart, when you said to that man, I don't want it, not if it's going to make me as miserable as you, what was his reaction?
I didn't understand exactly what you said.
The billionaire who came to look at the statue, and he was so miserable, and he said to you, do you want it? And you said, not if it's going to make me as miserable as you. Yeah. What was his reaction to you?
He just looked at me and he got upset at me. He got upset. And he took one look at the statue and he walked out of the wall.
And he never bought it.
And the thing was perfect for this guy's collection. It was perfect. It was, he got really upset at me when I said that. But I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, what do look, you were born into everything that the entire world wants, and you're bitching and complaining here. What? Yeah. How much more do you want? What do the only thing that's missing is your heart is closed. There's no love inside you.
And this is it. And I think there's those of us who have this thing about money because we want to be happy. And we know within inside that it's not money that makes you happy. It's what your heart. But then we have to overcome this situation that we do need money to do the things we want to do and live the life we want to live. And it's to just know how to handle it in the proper way.
It says in the Bible, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Caesar is money, rent, mortgage payments, going to the grocery store, buying, without being upset, being grateful that the grocer is supplying you with food. Yes. That the guy who owns the place you're living, you pay rent because you have a place to live.
Yeah.
So instead of being upset that life requires all this, give to Caesar what Caesar's do with an open heart. Yeah. And then give to God with what God gives, with an open heart.
Yeah, so much. Stuart, before we shut down now, you've written a book and you're doing all these classes. What is the name of the book again? And how can people connect with you? Rudra meditation, transforming life's tensions into joy and love.
This book, I've written a lot of books. A lot. I've written, I don't know, I published 8 or 9 books that can be gotten. You can get this on Amazon. But this book goes into what I teach and what my teacher taught deeper than any book I've ever written. And it's just it was such a profound, I mean, I always tell people, I don't think I even wrote this book. I was just a vehicle to which it came into the world. And I think if somebody reads this, they will learn very important things about what they have to do about fixing themselves, about transforming their unhappiness, their tension into a life where they can open their heart. I always say happy people are enlightened people. And, and it's very hard to find a happy person in this world, but anybody that can live that way is an enlightened person. And this book just came out of me. It really just came out of me. And it was published maybe 2 months ago.
Very good.
And people can find this on Amazon. They can find it on Ingram Spark, which is the biggest distributor of books in the world. Any bookstore that sells English books usually deals with Ingram Spark. And if somebody can go to the local bookstores and order it, they can find it at Barnes and Noble. They can find it at Walmart. And it can be ordered for them. And also on Amazon is a very easy place to find it. And I would suggest if somebody wants to find out about what I do and what I teach, this book it's just all there. My heart is there. My soul is in this book.
Okay. And how can people connect with you?
Easy. I have a website, Stuart Perrin, StuartPerrin.com. And I also, my email is Stuart D as in David Perrin @gmail.com. And also I probably have done 1,400 video talks that are on YouTube and Facebook. I mean this. After every class I teach, I always talk and answer questions. And my students record all this stuff and they put it on Facebook and on YouTube. So, I'm readily available. I mean, if people and anybody who ever emails me, I always answer their email. I always get back to them.
Okay. So, Stuart, before we say thank you for this lovely time we've spent, can you leave us with some little gold nugget of advice for those of us who are listening?
Look, the only person that each and every one of us is up against is themselves. And we have to learn how to transform all the internal chaos into an open heart, quiet mind, chakra, foundation, grounding inside ourselves. We have to learn how to transform our sexual energy into a healing energy inside that will activate Kundalini. Kundalini is the pathway to enlightenment. So what I always tell people, happy people are enlightened people. The goal of all meditation, the goal of life is to become a happy person. Why do we make money? Why do we have houses and cars and all that's supposed to make us happy? Well, it's very hard to find a happy person because people don't do the work inside themselves to build a system that will enable them to become a happy person. And meditation should be non-denominational. It doesn't matter if somebody is Christian, if they're Muslim, they're Jewish, they're Buddhist, they're Hindu. It doesn't matter. They could be an atheist. They could be an agnostic. What everybody wants is to become human.
Yes.
And build the highest levels of our humanity.
Stuart, thank you so much for that. And you're absolutely correct. The only person that is there to stop us is ourselves. And life is about being happy. And to know how we can go about that starts from within. So we have to get away from all the confusion, the noise, everything that's going on inside of us, especially here, and learn how to control that, be silent, and then connect. And connect and then listen. And in that listening and connection to the Creator is where we find guidance and our happiness. So for all those who are listening, and my guests are saying the same thing all over, it all starts from within. We have to do the work. So let's all try. We've now started 2026. Let's all try and find some ways. Stuart is there. I will put up his connection in the write-up. Please find some way, just that, give your time, that time to be silent and connect to source and listen. So for now, thank you all for looking at this video. I thank my guest, Stuart Perrin, that's there in Connecticut. I hope it's going to thaw out in the next couple of days, Stuart. But for everybody, keep warm, take care, and remember, everything is from within. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye. God bless you.